We are in Dallas and winding down the fourth day of SEC Media Days. Always a tradition of ours to talk to the commissioner on the final day. Sometimes we said 3 years ago we sat here and I'm not a dentist, but
3 years ago
it was like pulling teeth. But that was when the Texas-Oklahoma story broke. But let me start with Dallas, because this was when you made that decision, a lot of people's eyes raised. How do you think it's gone?
I think it's been a great week. I'm in my little inside the Omni bubble. I went to the All-Star game functions. Yeah, so I haven't seen the overall reaction, but our numbers were up. We had Radio Row with radio stations from Columbia, South Carolina, as far away in our league as you can get. I did completed interviews with Atlanta stations this morning, Chattanooga, Knoxville. And then we brought folks in from Oklahoma, from Texas that we've not had. I think more representation from Louisiana and Arkansas than we've had. So I think it was a really good week. And hey, Texas is a big part of the SEC, and the SEC is now a big part of Texas.
No, it felt really big on Monday. I was talking to somebody from Dallas, and the idea that this was sharing the limelight with one of the biggest sporting events of the year, the All-Star game, was really pretty amazing.
And that came to me, and I said, I think we can hold our own.
Yeah.
And I think we held our own.
I would say so. And yeah, I only know what's been on the network that I work for, but for 4 days in the morning, it was literally leading every one of the shows.
Yeah, and I apologize for walking behind your shots when you're on some of those morning shows, but a lot of people talk about kind of national footprint and 4 time zones, and I've said we are a national conference, and we were at 14. We're even more so at 16. We you can have a lot of opinions, but you cannot ignore the Southeastern Conference. And I think interacting with our coaches, the shows that are produced from here show the human side a bit, but also show the depth of preparation, of passion, and of preparation for our football season.
Speaking of preparation, your opening address, I would refer it to as State of the Union in many ways. It's not just about the SEC. It's on television live and nationally. Everyone is reacting to it. What is the preparation like for something like that?
We should do an SEC story on that experience, because it is maybe the most frustrating, 2 weeks of my year.
Wow.
I'm much better on deadlines, and I was away. We have a little place in Skaneateles, New York, on a lake that's kind of home, and you think that you can sort out all of the things around you. And I thought that would be easier than being in the office, because in the office people keep walking in, and I want to say, hey, if you want to go talk to like TV and a room full of reporters on Monday, okay, I'll deal with your problem, but I have to write this speech. And I couldn't say that to family, but I had a hard time getting my mind around what do you say at this moment in time. And it was not until I have a bunch of notes that date back to Destin on topics. I asked for input. It really was not until Saturday when I was able to write probably 80% of what I said. The Dacus quarterback thing, I was really proud of that, given we're in Dallas, and reconfigured early in the day. And then I walk into a news story that my daughter and her husband were watching. I didn't know anything about it. I just had stayed away from social media. And I've had conversations with politicians at our football game about, isn't this great how it brings people together? And so you're trying not to ignore big events, and I don't want to be in the middle of politics, and as I said, it wasn't intended, but football brings people together. And there are other venues where people come together, but we need more of what college football does and represents, not less. We don't need... there's plenty of criticism, and I respect those who are critics, but we don't need to think that it'll always be okay, because bringing Democrats and Republicans and liberals and conservatives and all demographics together around an event, I think remains important. And I think we saw that post-COVID when our baseball stadiums filled up right away as soon as you could come together. So that happened Saturday night, and then kind of flowed much better from that. Ordered some things, tweaked it until about midnight on Sunday when I was here, and grabbed the printout, read it through a few times out loud in front of a mirror, and then I was here. So that's the process. I put everybody to sleep with that, didn't I?
No, but it just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I walked in here and, I mean, everyone's riveted to it because you don't know what you're going to say and how you're going to address it. And not to compare you, there used to be an old joke, about the Fed chairman, could move the market and with one comment, but that's applicable to things that you say.
As I'm writing, I know I have to sit here with you on Thursday and defend my remarks. That's one. The second, and it happened, is what I say scrolls on ESPN through the day.
Absolutely.
And I may say something later that scrolls the next day. And so 16 is our today, 16 is our tomorrow. I think that's very clear. That's our focus. There are other distractions out there. And I'm not going to be distracted from the work we have for the Southeastern Conference as it exists because of what's happening around us. I have to pay attention, but I won't be distracted. And I encourage the same for our members. So that scrolled. So that was a good line, but it provoked more questions. And as I told Nick after my session where I had 3 questions about it, I almost went all right on him and got my hands going to say, I'm done with that one, as I recall he used to do.
As you're preparing something like this, back to the Fed chairman, you can move the markets pretty quickly. You want to make a statement. You want to be a voice of reason, but you also don't want to tip the table over, do you?
No, and as I walk out, there are some paragraphs, and I'll be happy to talk about a few of those where I have to think, particularly as I'm reading it out loud, do I really want to say that in front of the TV cameras and be on record? So there were 2 paragraphs, one about the outside interest in solving college sports problems. So it's private equity, some people involved in professional leagues or formerly involved in professional leagues. That will sound critical. It is meant to describe our responsibility for resolving our issues and not falling into the trap that, oh, there's an idea. That's got to be better than the frustrations we have internally. The next paragraph was equally important because it said we have to be open to ideas. We have to be open to new concepts. And that's our responsibility, both as we deal with the issues in front of us, as we seek to grow revenue. I think that's a pretty responsible balance to say to our membership and to the greater college sports community, let's not be chasing every new idea when some of that has put us into some of these challenges we have. Let's focus on who we are, make sure we understand the principles, and maybe we can access some of these ideas. But let's do it on our terms, not terms dictated to us by others that cedes control to some other entity.
It doesn't take much in the media today and you've been the subject of it countless times, even this year on important subjects where something you say just gets blown to bits. I was thinking of someone I know that you know very well and is a great friend of this league, Tim Cook, saying once that when he speaks in whether it's India or in China or in such a global company, he has to drill down the message because one inflection is going to perhaps do serious damage. I know it has to be the same way.
Oh, yeah. I said something on a radio interview yesterday about CFP selection last year. I didn't think it was insulting to anyone. The headline is I've apparently insulted another fan base in another conference because we had conversations with Georgia and Alabama about, hey, we might not have a team in, despite what I said on Saturday about one of these things is not like the other and being confident, which I think is my job as a representative. I think Georgia was one of the 4 best teams on paper. Now, there's criteria. It didn't play out that way. And I think Kirby's frustrated. I was frustrated, but that's reality, and there are things we didn't do. That's about last year. And if people want to be mad about last year still, it really leads into next year, which is it's evidence of why we're moving to a 12-team playoff. Because I would argue, you take Ole Miss last year, take Missouri last year. I mean, those teams could have put together a run towards a national championship in this new format. That should be the focus. But you say things, and as you described from Tim's experience, it can be perceived and manipulated in a certain way.
Just a personal thought, and I've expressed this to you privately, but I thought your game day appearance might have been the most important moment of the year for Alabama, because I think it helped get them in. Whether you want to comment on that.
I will walk through airports and people will say, "Hey, that Sesame Street thing. You're the guy that said that thing about Sesame Street in college football." So
no, it's true. It was the right thing to say at the right moment, and yeah, there are 12, 13 people watching that.
So you want to know? Yeah, you want to know the background. As I was on with Pat McAfee, and so he kind of warms you up on Friday, and then I'm on there, and he's back. So I had thought about the what ifs all night, and it's just people have to understand one of these things is not like the other. We're just different, and I think these 16 are different by comparison. That doesn't diminish anyone. And so I was thinking about that line, and at some point I go back to my childhood in Sesame Street, and then in the moment one comes out is, "Hey, you remember that Sesame Street song? One of these things is not like the other." That's the Southeastern Conference, and I think that in women's soccer, I think that in baseball, I think that in gymnastics, but it happened to be a football conversation.
Yeah, and it was a significant one. And we're back in Dallas as day 4 of Media Days. The commissioners here. We've really had an in-depth conversation, but there is a story that you've done so many interviews, it's hard to keep track of each one. But the question that has come up so often in the last couple of years is about where the conference is in relation to moving forward on 8 versus 9 games.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. I did not include it in my remarks with intent, thinking I would be asked. So we're not inattentive to our 26 schedule and beyond. Remember, 24 and 25 are at 8. 24 was a year earlier than the membership invitation originally stated. All the changes around us made this the right time. Thrilled to be where we are, but it was a quicker time frame. So just walking away from a lot of non-conference games, also wanting to see what happened with the CFP. The wise thing, I think, is what we've done, which is stay at 8. We have a year as a 16-team, 8-game, single-division conference, followed by a 12-team playoff. I think those are important learning experiences. And then you get to the first quarter of 2026, seems the right opportunity to make the next decision. And the format issue, 8 versus 9, the learning experiences from last year, our work with our television partner, will all help inform that decision. Bowl access, scheduling options, and I don't think we're going to open Pandora's box of the 40-plus models before, but we can take a healthy look at what's for 26 and beyond.
Is there a moment, I'm sure there is, when that has to be decided?
Yes. And I think, like, you were my COVID teacher when I said July 23rd or something like this. And July 23rd came, and you wrote that down. And we did not decide until July 30th. So it was an extra week. Yeah, we've gone as late as destined for that decision. 15 months later? I think that's the outer limit.
Okay.
I think the motivation is to decide sooner rather than later. And we have some work to do. But we have an opportunity to learn a little bit to inform our decision-making as well.
We're talking to the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, Greg Sankey. Your line, speaking of the ESPN ticker, about where this league is, but you know the chatter because you've done so many interviews this week, and that's about the future of the league. You addressed it eloquently, but I think we all like to hear how you approach that beyond where we are, because nobody really stands still any longer.
No, and Paul, we had with some of our staff Sunday night at dinner a little bit of conversation about not standing still. And so this week you've seen some of the activity around sponsors, Sonic, Southwest, bringing Apple into the technology piece for our sidelines. Those are elements of not standing still. The out there scheduling issue, part of the reason that it's out there is there's so much on our plate around the litigation issues and legal settlement. I came here after a video conference with some more work. Tomorrow morning have video conferences on that. That is really, really pressing and is an enormous amount of time that is part of moving the model forward. And then once we have terms, the implementation phase of that over the next 6 to 12 months is enormous. So that's maybe not as transparent a moving forward effort. Now, kind of hidden in your question is, man, there's a lot of noise happening out there in some other places. What does that mean for you? And I have to be attentive. I think our member institutions are attentive. And that's there's 2 lawsuits. That's what I'm asked about. What does that mean for us? We watch and see what happens. The reality is those member institutions in a conference have been part of agreements, part of decisions, part of a constitution and bylaws that are now subject to litigation. Our presidents have said relative to expansion, do not involve us in litigation, don't expose us to lawsuits, and don't take our pie and just slice it more thinly. Don't spend our money to add people. And I think those are pretty clear instructions, which says we're watching. I think the 16 that we have are just incredible. And we have this geography where we added 5 minutes on an airplane flight when we expanded compared to our previous long trips. We added universities playing at the highest level, so they add to our national championship count for last year. They add to our Olympian account. Those celebration events, they were different. You and I were at both. You start off with a Sunday where people are free to come spend the day and celebrate, and they're selling SEC merchandise with the Texas logo. It just means more T-shirts. I was paying attention, sold out very early. You go up to Norman, the same kind of thing, different tone. It's a work day, black tie event to just honor the transition.
I watched you throughout those 2 days. I thought you were really hilarious on stage with Pitbull about to come out.
Can I just say,
please,
that was pressure. Like, I have pressure, but when you have thousands of people.
I mean there were 50,000 people there.
Yeah, and all that's between them and Pitbull, who was very nice to me, knew exactly what was going on, knew the transition, was there to celebrate. You just got to get out of the way. I don't care that you've written out 4 pages of comments to say and honor and the excitement and thank yous. You got to get out of the way, go trigger the cannon, and restore your hearing after that. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, by the way, it wasn't, 50,000 people would be pressure, but it was also live on television.
We had a couple people pass out. It was getting hot.
It was, but I just thought, this guy can do it all. I mean, it was like a last-second Caitlin Clark shot. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
I got out of there and they cheered when I gave them the option, and they cheered for Pitbull, but they cheered that I was gone too, so we were good.
But back to what I was trying to ask you, though, in terms of the exhaling after the next day, and there's not a lot of time for that, but just the full circle of these 3 years since chaos reigned in Hoover toward that, and especially here as we put a stamp on it.
Well, you managed through that Wednesday to our conversation on Thursday. The next Friday, I've told you that's the most subdued celebratory moment for a commissioner adding 2 great universities in the history of college athletics, because what Joe Harris and Jay Hartzell said to me is, we want you to be respectful and orderly in transition. So you never saw flags flying in Norman or in Austin with SEC logos until they were here. You didn't see that merchandise. That was respectful and orderly. And then a lot of work, a lot of assimilation, a really effective transition plan. Credit to the SEC office staff for activating that plan. We brought coaches in. We brought the presidents into our meetings, the athletics directors. We made scheduling decisions, and then to be in those moments in Austin and Norman is something I don't want to ever forget. No. Because the embrace both ways from both schools, from us to them and them to us, was pretty special. And as I reminded them, welcome. We're excited you're here. Now everybody wants to gain victories over you. And you just think about the scope. Defending volleyball national champions. Texas had a rowing national championship. What Patty Gasso's done in softball. I'm proud that we've won 5 straight baseball College World Series among 5 different members.
Right.
That's pretty cool. That's an anomaly. Oklahoma's won the last 4 national championships in softball, and that Florida game, the elimination game to lead into the championship series in softball, man, that's going to happen every weekend next spring in softball across the board in our league. That's just really, really special, and I want us to stay together. I want us to make sure we collaborate and communicate. I want to work through some of the tumult of change in as positive a way as we can, provide opportunities, keep the breadth of sports, figure out how to grow revenue. But man, it's special. And those couple of days were an exclamation point to remind us of that reality.